Kogan again in A10, and now we're going to get into, we've talked about the United States being neutral, neutrality acts, good neighbor policy. Now we're going to talk about the United States getting involved in the war. And, most people know, before they even come to us,
it's not a surprise.
It's not a surprise. A couple of times that the United States was, attacked. You have December 7th, 1941, and you have 9/11, 2001. These are things that people know before you even get into 8th grade. Yeah. But what we're going to get into is the why today, is the why they wind up attacking them. So when we're looking at war coming to the United States, again, we talked about Japan wanting to control the Pacific. They invade China, rename Manchuria to Manchukuo. The Japanese had seized at this point most of China. Just to give you an update is what else is going on in Europe. Germany defeats France in 1940. So these are things that are going on just as we're getting ready to get into World War II, or getting attacked to get into World War II. After Germany defeats France, Japanese signed an alliance with Germany and Italy. So these are other things that you see going on. The Japanese officially becoming a part of the Axis powers. League of Nations was condemning what they were doing in the Pacific. They were kicked out of the league.
Couldn't stop them.
U.S. is trying to stop Japanese aggression by refusing to sell oil and scrap metal to Japan. You're not going to officially get into it. You're not going to give them threats. But if you're going to hurt them somewhere, hurt them in the wallet.
Yeah. So we're almost at a point where it's Japan is doing the same thing in the Pacific, what Hitler's doing in Europe. Yeah. They're expanding.
Yep.
And we saw that as a greater threat to us than Hitler at the time, because we had colonial possessions in the Pacific. We had all of our refueling stations. We had military outposts.
Philippines.
We had the open door policy in China. There was a lot of money to be made here, and we're like looking at Japan like, yo, hold off. You're hurting us economically at a time, Great Depression,
right,
where we really don't or can't afford to be hurt economically. So we're going to cut them off.
Exactly.
As a way of trying to cut their feet out from underneath them, because you need metal,
right,
to make bullets and boats and planes,
ships,
and, all those things. And obviously you're going to need oil to fuel your army.
Which is one of the reasons why they invaded China.
Yeah.
So, when you go back to the 1850s, Japan was an isolationist nation. I'm sure, as you recall, we forced them into trading with us. And
90 years later, they're one of the biggest powers in the world.
Right. And they become so dependent on that trade that, they consider it an act of war to cut off with them. Along with the other things. The embargo angers Japan because they needed those resources. And then as they were talking about kind of keeping things at peace, the Japanese and American officials were meeting. Japan asked the U.S. to lift the embargo. The U.S. called on Japan to withdraw its armies from China and Southeast Asia. Japan says no, and now we're at this point where we can't come to any sort of agreement.
And I make the comparison here that what's really going on is here on one face, the Japanese are sitting down with us with a handout, hey, let's negotiate and kind of come to some sort of diplomatic solution on how we can reestablish good relations, whatever it is. But on the other hand, they have a knife ready to stab us in the back. Because November 1941, they're negotiating with us. It's not like they woke up on the morning of December 7th, hey, let's attack America.
Right.
They're planning this, as we're going to see in the infamy speech, days or even weeks in advance.
Absolutely. And then the planning that came in place, you needed to get people on the ground in Hawaii to kind of give you an idea of what it's like. This is gathering intelligence. This is a reconnaissance. You had somebody that went there. At this point in time, you have a lot of Japanese tourists that are going to Hawaii, and they're looking around.
There's a tremendous amount of innovation that even went into this.
Sure.
Because the Japanese torpedo bombers, their torpedoes were not designed to float, glide, whatever you want to do, in shallow water.
Right.
So they had to invent a contraption to put on their torpedoes to allow their torpedoes to accurately hit a target in shallower waters like a harbor as opposed to an open ocean.
So while all that negotiation is taking place, all that reconnaissance information, that's what they're gathering. If you're going to attack somebody, if you're going to get them into a war and almost try to cripple them, which is what they were trying to do with Pearl Harbor in the Pacific, if you're going to hit somebody, you got to make it count. So you have to know where everything is. And, this is just an aerial shot of where the United States were keeping its ships. This is a naval base. So you have planes, aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, you were gonna say something.
I was gonna just bring up Alfred Thayer Mahan.
Yeah.
You know, like even the reason we're here, like everything almost coming full circle. The reason we're here, you know, the Alfred Thayer Mahan. Hey, we should probably try to acquire Hawaii because there's a really good bit like natural harbor there that's really well protected.
Yep.
You know, where we can probably build a really large military base.
And it's one of those things when we talk about acquiring Hawaii, it wasn't done in the nicest, most honest way, and
No.
the people of Hawaii are still upset about it to this day, rightfully so. But then there's the other part where it's like, well, if we didn't acquire it, somebody may have.
Yeah.
But you know, that's a discussion for another day. But you know, when you're looking at what they have available, you know, the Japanese knew if you hit them on this particular day at this particular time, you know, their guard's going to be somewhat down. The fact that they're doing it on a Sunday. You know, I will find a document one day that says why they went to a Sunday, but you know, most military bases, you know, pretty quiet on a Sunday. A lot of people going to church right around at this hour, some of them.
I would also say that many military bases have leave on Saturday night.
Sure,
You know,
absolutely.
so you could go on out, have a good time.
Yeah, these guys were up late the night before, probably at choir practice, or at the library.
You see the obvious here. The obvious are our ships.
Yep.
The not so obvious, oil storage.
Yep.
An airfield here. There's another airfield about 3 miles away. So this is the perfect target.
Yep.
And literally known as Battleship Row. These ships are at anchor.
Yep.
At times even tied to one another. You know, there's the old saying, you know, shooting fish in a barrel. This was shooting fish in a barrel.
Even if you gave them an hour or two warning,
Mm-hmm.
you would still need to get people on there, get those ships moving before you can really even do anything. So that whole fish in a barrel thing.
I
is,
mean, we've got more than 60. We got more than 60 naval vessels. Luckily, our aircraft carriers are not there.
Yep.
They're out on routine maneuvers.
Yep.
They had left a couple of days earlier.
So I don't know if that was in their planning, the Japanese in their planning, what they're doing their intelligence recon, if they knew the aircraft carriers were out or not. I mean, that one I'm not sure.
I don't believe they did. It was just kind of like a, hey, let's go out and practice some maneuvers.
It was a shoot for the Japanese.
Yeah.
And, oh my gosh, you know, at least they didn't get the aircraft
because
carriers.
I mean, if they got our aircraft carriers, there's really nothing stopping Japan from invading the west coast of the United States at that point.
No.
So
you know, just more of location of our assets.
And that, if you go back, this is the actual damage done. I mean, we haven't even got up to the attack, but this is like all the red are ships that are completely destroyed. The yellow are ships that are severely damaged and need to take years to repair.
Perfect. Just another idea of what Hawaii looked like. I mean, again, this is not where all the ships are located, but you know, again, great place. Another aerial view. You know, I don't know how they got that. I know we were talking about that before.
Yeah, we were talking about if it was a weather balloon, if it would, but this is clearly something the Japanese got their hands on.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's leading us to not just believe, but know there are spies living in Honolulu at this time.
A picture like this is very, very valuable in the hands of somebody who wants to do damage to you.
For military intelligence.
So then,
Oxymoron.
I stole these from you. I guess this is the route.
Yeah, this is the planning. Leaving November 26th. Their task force arrived in Hawaii around December 7th. That's 7:0700. I think that's 7 a.m., Mr. Heeg.
0. Always a letter, not a number.
Oh, sorry.
0.
0700. You know, which is around the time they will take off. It takes them about an hour to fly to Honolulu. They drop their bombs, and by the morning of December 8th, they're out of there, heading back to Japan.
And that's what your aircraft carriers really essentially are. They're floating runways. If you have Japanese airplanes go over there, go over to Hawaii, attack, you know, and come
Not
back,
enough
you know,
fuel.
it's just
as
not
we're going to
enough
see in the
fuel.
Doolittle raid.
Yep. More of this.
This
as well.
is the actual waves. The Japanese planned on a 3-wave attack. The first wave, these are actually the planes: 49 high-level bombers, 51 dive bombers, 40 torpedo bombers, and 43 fighters. The fighters were there more for protection in case we were able to get our planes in the air. You know, but they will be shooting soldiers, sailors as they're floating. Second wave, so we're looking at over 200 planes in the first wave, 150 planes in the second wave. The Japanese did plan a third wave that Admiral Yamamoto calls off, believing that they no longer have the element of surprise. And by 9 o'clock in the morning, we had about 30 fighter planes up in the air, you know, shooting back at the Japanese.
Wow. Again, there's just some of your pilots.
Young men.
Young. You know, and here's just some of the destruction and carnage that you saw from it.
And this doesn't do it justice, you know, because like you and I watched 9/11 happen
Sure.
live on television,
Yep.
you know, and this to me, okay, it's a sunken ship. This is the USS Arizona. What we're not seeing here are the 350 dead sailors that are in her hull, as she was high-level bomber, pierced her hull, blew up the ship from the inside out.
And then there's the 350 families who were hearing about this, wondering, you know, where are they? Is my guy okay? You know, just an absolute devastation. And when it came to, I love to dive, and you know, I was taking a dive class, and they're like, oh, if you want to read a book, you know, the only book that was ever really written about what these guys had to go through, you have to read Descent into Darkness. I'm like, all right, bang, got it right away. And the divers who were going down there, you know, this was a recovery operation where dive operations are, you know, in the 40s, they're better than they were in the early 1900s, but they're going down there blind. You're going on a ship where, yeah, you normally know how to maneuver around a ship if you're a sailor, but everything's upside down. They have to draw maps out, and you know you're doing in this dark. So, I mean, just the recovery operation for this.
And it wasn't. This is showing us it wasn't just, as I said before, it wasn't just the ships attacked. They were attacking our airfields.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it was like over 200 planes are damaged or destroyed.
Yeah. So let's get to our damage report.
Yeah.
Right. So when you look at really. Right, U.S. casualties, you have what, about 2,400 killed, 1,100 wounded. That's going to give you about like 3,000, 3,500 over there.
You're looking at 150
Yep.
damaged aircraft, 170 or so completely destroyed aircraft, and then this was their main objective, though.
Yep.
You know, they went after 19. Oops, sorry.
That's all right.
Total of 19 ships are either completely destroyed, like the Arizona, the Oklahoma, or damaged. You know, and in particular, they're targeting our battleships. You know, I don't know if a battleship is more valuable to the Navy than an aircraft carrier. I think it's like 1 and 1A.
They all kind of like dance together pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, one. Yeah.
But like that was like, there's a reason why the game is called Battleship.
Right.
You sunk my battleship.
Right.
Like that, they were targeting our battleships, knowing the firepower that a battleship can bring with it.
Now, the one thing, you know, Mr. Kogan was bringing up before, we were able to kind of launch attacks, but this is one of these stories that is really starting to get out there more and more, without a doubt. Of course, we have to remember segregation is still going on in the background. You know, you had segregation taking place in the military, and Dory Miller was a sailor at Pearl Harbor, and, you know, pretty much if you were an African-American in the Navy, you had servant types of jobs or cook type of jobs. He has the presence of mind to grab a gun, start shooting back, and I'm pretty sure they're either in the process of naming a ship after him.
You should be.
Like, you know, finally, you know, 1941, and now, you know, you're talking 2021. I don't know where they are at that.
I'd love to do some more research into this, because I'm sure we could find some documents of like high-level government officials being like, oh, somebody did something heroic. Oh, he's African-American. Maybe we should just keep that to ourselves for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now it's coming out.
Winds up getting the Navy Cross for it. So, you know, you're talking about the second highest medal. But, you know, again, you know, during that time, you know, I mean, to give you an idea, it's like he didn't go, at this point, I'm just a cook.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, let me get a gun, let me shoot back, which is a lot to say about the character of the people that were in a position to actually do something.
Go back.
Yep.
This is the USS Oklahoma. Torpedoed, I think 3 or 4 times.
Jeez.
Torpedoed 3 or 4 times, actually capsizes, goes upside down and sinks. There's 426 sailors on board. Many of them were still alive when it capsized.
Right.
And for I believe it was like up to 24 hours later, they could hear tapping from inside the hull. And these people are actually, they're welders trying to cut through the hull to get to them. Unfortunately, they ran out of oxygen. You know, these people, and they don't actually drown, they actually suffocated to death.
This is rough. So now, of course, it's going to be on now. Now, you know, we're going to war.
Yep.
You know, with all this damage. Let me try that again. With all this damage, you know, we're not gonna leave this alone. We need anything else?
Nope.
We got it. Thanks for watching.